Maurice, didn't you work on the docks or something? Weren't you like a ship docker? What were you?
He still does. Syndications have been down.
Mauricio used to work on the docks. Union's been on strike. Is down on it. Yeah, I used to do some maritime work, and I used to spend a lot of times down in the Port of Long Beach, Port of LA.
Welcome to Drunk Real Estate. Grab a drink and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to episode 97 of Drunk Real Estate. I am Kyle Wilson, Ashley Wilson's husband, and I'm joined by my three co-hosts, starting with Mr. Jay Scott. Hey, how are you now?
I am doing well.
Just kidding. I don't give a
Jay's taking it on the chin today. I think Kyle's already drunk.
No, we're doing letter. Me and AJ were doing Letterkenny quotes. That's a quote from Letterkenny. Sorry, Jay. How's it going, man?
You have to be Canadian to appreciate that show.
It helps. It definitely helps. You either got to be Canadian or you got to have lived in a small town.
Fair enough.
You're a city boy, Jay. I can tell.
I'm from downtown Baltimore.
Yeah. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you guys?
I can't complain. You drinking tonight?
I picked up the rest of the bottle of Stones and Bones from last week. Hopefully it's still fresh, and I know Mauricio.
Are you drinking a week-old wine?
I am.
Oh my gosh, you really don't care.
Do you have one of those like preservers at least?
No, look at it.
Just straight uncapped and everything.
Oh
just
my gosh, that is
right in the
disgusting.
glass.
That is just gross.
No, it's actually not too bad.
Jay, what's that on your face?
I'm growing out the beard.
Oh.
So I have a wedding. I have a family wedding in 2 weeks. So I have a week and a half to decide if it's something that's going to take or not. So next Tuesday night, actually, let's do this. Next Tuesday night, you guys can give the thumbs up or thumbs down if I keep it.
Jay, nobody gives a
Mauricio, what's up, buddy?
Dude, I am pumped, man. I am excited to find out what we're talking about on today's episode. I have no idea what's going on today, but
we're smart guys. We'll find something smart.
I'm doing good, man. I'm actually pretty jacked. I don't know if you knew this, but my number one all-time social media post happened last week, and I'm still riding the high. I just posted something, and now I know what going viral for me anyway.
What was it about?
I got 200 views instead of my usual 20, so I was very, very excited. Co-GPs, man.
Awesome.
Anytime I post about co-GPs and how everybody screws that up, it just gets a lot of attention. So I might just start a channel called the Co-GP Show or something.
Well, people must be getting interested in syndications. Here we go. AJ, what's up, man?
How's it going, buddy? Doing good.
Yeah?
Yeah. Got my Diet Coke, red Solo cup, as per usual.
Chilling with Ernie?
Yeah. Chilling with Ernie. He's doing good too, aren't you, buddy? Attaboy.
I feel like I feel like that could be its own segment. Chilling with Ernie.
Chilling with Ernie.
That's a good podcast title, actually.
Hey, speaking of chilling with Ernie, though, you need a haircut, AJ. What's going on there? It's getting a little out of control.
I tried. Literally, I tried today twice. 2 different locations they're going to take me in. Why you got to rub that in, Mauricio?
Well, you don't have a guy or a girl?
I do, but
AJ, you're a successful businessman. They should be coming to you. They should be coming to the office.
That's what I told them. They asked me not to come back. I don't get it.
Your time is too valuable to go freaking window shopping at different places.
As a flex, AJ, you should have them come while you're doing a podcast sometime. Just be talking. Someone cutting your hair.
Hold on. So
Getting in yesterday. I couldn't get in yesterday. For some reason, I think it's a popular haircut season or something.
You're those guys who just schedule haircuts the morning of, huh? And just expect people to have
literally,
a spot for you?
I have an hour free, and I call and I say, "Are you available right now?"
yeah, that's what I do too.
And if the answer is no, then I just wait till the next time I have an available.
Jay, do you get your haircut at Costco?
No, but she's actually right next to Costco.
He's there so often. That's why he could just pop in and see if they're in.
I need to complain for a second. So I haven't been to Costco in months because my Costco is part of this mall that's right next to me, and they just tore down the mall. They left the Costco, but they tore down the mall. And so they changed the entrance, so it's like a temporary entrance, and the parking lot is all messed up. I refuse to go to. I will not be going to Costco until August.
Holy cow!
Just because the parking lot's messed up?
the parking lot's messed up, and it's a temporary entrance, so it's hard to get in and out of there. And
That's risky, dude. That's a risky move because in August the tariffs will be back up to like 300%, and you're going to be paying way more than you are today.
not just that, but because of this whole mall thing, they closed down the food court, so I can't get anything at the food court. And my wife told me today they just announced that they're going to be discontinuing the rotisserie chickens until August.
Jay, you're so soft. You're 10-ply, bud.
We have to listen to this the whole episode.
I got a list. All right. Well, actually, no. I got to tell. I actually liked this wild turkey last time, so I'm doubling up. Going 2 episodes in a row. Wild turkey 101. And AJ, I don't know if you noticed, I'm rocking your shirt, buddy.
I did. I'm proud of you.
I had to bring it out sometime. Actually, fits me kind of well. I don't hate it. When I go up to Canada, I'll put it on. We'll see how that goes.
There you go. It depends on where you're at.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Anywhere in Canada, I'll get a stern talking to. They might even swear at me.
Go to Alberta.
All right. As Mauricio said, we don't really know what we're talking about. So, Jay, we want to just start talking about something like CPI or
No, Mauricio has a topic.
Let's start with you. I want to see what you got. What are your thoughts on the economy right now, Jay? CPI, tariffs?
Everything is still cruising along. So CPI inflation came out today and looking good number. The 12-month moving average is 2.3%, which is the lowest it's been since beginning of 2021. Is that right, AJ?
That's right.
So it came in at just under 0.2, which annualizes at about 2.4. Actually, I think it annualized to 2.3, which is right about where the Fed wants it to be. So inflation is looking good.
Wait, I thought the Fed wanted 2. Did it go up now? It's not 2% anymore. It's 2.4.
2. I mean, it's
between 2 and 5. I think target
between 2 and 10. As long as it's between 2 and 10, we're good.
So
I mean, the girls Jay goes out with.
Good enough for Kyle to complain about it.
Historically in this country, inflation's been at 3.1% over the last 120 years. So that whole 2% thing, and we've talked about this before, but the 2% thing came from the fact that about a decade ago, the Fed was actually concerned that inflation was too low. Not that it was too high. They weren't trying to get it down to 2. They were actually trying to get it up to 2%. And so they picked that 2% target because I think they thought that was reasonable to get it up to that.
Wasn't it like New Zealand was using it as their target? And they were like, that sounds good.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I don't know if that's true, but whatever. I mean, regardless, it was a number.
It was on the internet, Jay. It was on the internet. I think Al Gore said it. It must be true.
If Al Gore said it and he created the internet, then yeah, that's got to be true.
Taylor Swift song. So,
but long story short, I mean, 3.1%. That's the historical average. So it's kind of crazy that we're freaking out over 2.5% or 2.5 to 3%. So anyway, inflation's looking good. Later this week, we'll get I guess Thursday, the day this is released, we'll get PPI inflation, which is the wholesaler inflation, like what businesses pay. Hopefully that'll be pretty low too. We're going to get retail sales numbers this week, so that'll be pretty telling for last month. We're going to get a bunch of housing data. We can talk about this next week, but home builder confidence is coming in. Housing starts data, housing permits data is coming in this week. So we're going to get a lot of good data this week.
Stock market's up on the year.
Stock market is finally back up on the year.
All right, I'm not gonna let you off the hook on this one. Like, if you're gonna start using historical numbers, like the last, what did you say, like the 150 years, what was the number? Like 153 years at the 3.1%. Like you gotta use the same data. Like, we can't use data from like even 30 years ago, and the way we calculated CPI is completely different than today. And if you go back 100 years, who knows what the CPI was like, a little bread and fish and whatever. So if you're going to go do that, then let's recalculate and let's use the same denominator versus just throwing out these statistics and looking like you're smart.
Well, but the point, I think my point is
an alternative than Mauricio. Instead of just on his data, what's your data say?
I'll get back to you.
I mean, I think the important point is that, I mean, we can calculate this to as many significant figures as you want. Yeah, 2.63842, but in reality, it's probably nowhere close to the actual data. So, I mean, the fact that we're somewhere in the 2s is probably a good sign, whether it's low 2s, high 2s, because in reality, it's probably closer to 5, the way it's always been. So. I don't think it's important. Like, again, as far as I'm concerned, the important thing is that we calculate it relatively consistently over time. Yeah, it's changed a few times over the years, especially since the 90s. I mean, in the 90s, it changed a bunch, but it's been relatively consistent.
Look, I agree with you. Obviously, I'm having a hard time. But the one thing I did want to think is because we were talking about it today on the chat, like, AJ, I think this was you, so I'm going to pick on you on this one. Like, hey, look, the numbers came down. It's 2.4. Like, Kyle's been right. Like, it's time for the Fed to start cutting rates. And my response was like, there's a lag to all this, right? We're looking at 2.4 and it's all great, but we still haven't seen the effects of these tariff moves. Like, I just was reading, like, last Friday, I think, was the first shipments that came in from China at the 145% tariffs are starting to hit the ports. So, I mean, there's a lag effect right here. So the interesting thing is going to be over the next month, to see what the effect of these tariffs have been on the CPI.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a bunch of different stuff. I mean, I was just reading a few minutes ago in preparation for the topic you're going to do, and I'm not going to, not to derail your topic. But interestingly, 10%, over 10% of the employees in Southern California are tied to the ports and to shipping. And so, I mean, I can imagine that we're going to see some. It may be temporary if things get fixed, and it may fix itself quickly. But I imagine we're going to see some bad unemployment data for at least a month or two because there's going to be some hit. Changing the subject,
Well, I think there's a couple things I think that are obviously important about the data and everything. It lags, yes. But also, when you look at the overall numbers, it's amazing to me how disconnected they are to the noise in the market, which is always how it works, right? Perfect example is like insider trading. Like, if you see the CEO selling, that's the best time to buy. They are the number one indicators of the worst timing of the market. So they always sell at the bottom. And people are like, how could they be so dumb? Well, it actually has nothing to do with that at all. It has to do with timing in which they can legally announce, and it goes. So they sell at the top. The problem is they can't sell the day they sell, right? So they are regulated by the SEC. There has to be a certain amount of time that goes on until they can sell. But the miscorrelation
there's a schedule, AJ, there's a schedule too. They have to literally say, hey, this month I'm going to sell this much, or this quarter, next year. Like, they have to predetermine.
When it goes up, they start to do that, but it doesn't go into effect. So it looks like they're bad timing, but they're not. They were doing it when the market was high, right? But when you look at the overall market and its disconnect to, I think, reshuffling the cards and the noise versus the signals, this was a classic disallocation to the signal versus the noise. Lots of noise, but the meat of it, even like we were talking about the GDP that was revised down, right? When you look at the overall revisions and what it goes down, we have a huge thing with the mix-up of or not the mix-up, but the tariffs, right? That obviously brings unknowns. That brings a whole bunch of stuff, but it caused the overall market to freak out, even though the core GDP numbers that we look at were not only healthy, they were growing. And the companies that got hit were universal. They weren't actual companies that would be impacted. This is the stuff that I love because I'm a value-based investor. But companies that had nothing to do with tariffs were getting slammed because of tariff noise. And this tends to be pretty true even in like real estate and other markets. So if you're an investor, right, keeping a cool head and investing when the noise is crazy and knowing the signals to look out for, that really, really pays off. And I think investing's in one of those slumps right now where people are.
Wow, there's someone's getting super rich here, and I don't want to point fingers, but I'm guessing it's someone who knows Trump very well. Because even over last weekend, like, you're looking at it and you see the news and you're like, oh, okay, first thing Monday morning, the stock market, and I said to my wife, stock market's going to rip 3 to 5%. First thing over the course, and what did it do? It went up. It went up, came back a little bit down, but it still finished up 3%. Like, there's somebody who knows what's going to happen and is front running all this stuff. It's such a grift that it's like there's going to be people who are getting so rich off of this noise.
You're not? I am. So I'm making a lot of money.
You're playing the daily stock market off of when there's going to be announced, like, oh, we have a trade deal with China. Oh, we have all these different things. Like, I don't have the inside track on that. When Trump's going to tweet
the
something.
daily ones, you don't need. It doesn't need to be daily to do market corrections. Load up on stocks when they're overextended like that, and buy some options, and then plus buy other asset classes.
Oh, for sure. But like, I'm choosing to stay out of it because all of a sudden one tweet could erase everything that I just did. So like. But that's what I'm saying. Anyone who knows what's going to get tweeted, like they're making a ton of money right now.
Here's a perfect example. I was reading this the other day, and I haven't verified this myself, but I have no reason not to believe it. It was some analyst blog that was saying the Trump coin, the crypto coin that Trump made, 98% of people who have purchased the coin have sold it at a loss. Of the 2% that have made money on it, only 58 people have made more than $10,000. And combined, those 58 people have made 170 million. So there's a very small group of people that is getting very rich, while the other 98%.
You literally described capitalism.
But that's not capitalism.
That's the stock market. No, the stock market fluctuations tied to different announcements, everything else, that absolutely is. I mean, you can look at anything you want to do, any Bitcoin, anything else like that, which I don't really care about that stuff. But the vast majority of people sell at the bottom and buy at the top.
It's not 98%.
So before we start, so we've been saying all these good things about the economy right now. Before we start saying the bad things, because I feel like that's what Mauricio is going to get into, the shipping, I feel like we should mention one more good thing here, guys, that the U.S. budget surplus now surged to $258 billion in April. A deficit topped $1 trillion. So, I mean, good things. Tariffs aren't necessarily all a bad thing, right?
They brought in $9 billion of that $258 billion surplus. So
16.
Sorry.
So the Treasury reported that customs duties in April totaled $16 billion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going off memory. I thought it was 9. Okay, 16. The vast majority of that was that the IRS brought in a lot more money than they expected last month. So that's a good thing because they had brought in less the month before, but last month was the big month. April is always the big month for people submitting their taxes.
Government spending was down a huge amount. And you want to know the best, you want to know my favorite thing about the government spending being down? Everybody's like, oh, Dodge. No, it has nothing to do with Doge. So this is my favorite statistic. I'll show you guys here. This is like just amazing. It's amazing because it's so ridiculous that it shouldn't be a thing. But the only thing we had to do to cut hundreds of billions, let me share this, from the government spending real quick was ask the government to simply track where the money goes. So a lot of people don't know this, but until this administration basically said, hey, we have to know where the money's going. That's all we're asking. Now, this was actually the main thing that got the government in an uproar about. They wanted to make sure that government that was allocated, that Congress allocated, could be tracked. They didn't even have the ability to do that. Nobody knew. The moment they tracked it, the government spending dropped. It says it dropped, but nothing that was purposely allocated went away. Yet government spending contracted. So what they did is say, all right, we now implemented a new system that tracks money, where Congress is saying it's supposed to go. Is it going there? Every single agency could not provide a record of money spent. None of them passed. They couldn't tell where tens of billions and hundreds of billions were going. Nobody could track it. Nobody even knew. So they put in the traceable rules where it said you have to track it. Immediately, hundreds of billions of dollars stopped being spent, but it wasn't funds that were allocated. This isn't just like, oh, we're not going to allocate funds anymore. It shows a lot of what's going on within the government, right? And this newfound transparency, and everybody's trying to keep an eye and a lookout on. And I wonder how much of this will hopefully continue, but whether they spend or not, just more transparency, a way for the public to actually know, to question, instead of it being like a bank, an investment bank that has this ginormous black box of derivatives that the CEOs don't even know what's going on. But
any huge business is the same thing, right? That's why every few years they got to go through a whole forensic accounting, because
which the government doesn't have to
find millions of dollars. In this case,
what is that new thing they're trying to put in, which actually requires them to go through a forensic accounting for the government?
And this isn't new. I mean, every so often I keep hearing this idea of like, hey, let's just like, the pork barrel. Let's look at all the money that's being wasted, and we're spending money in this and spending money in that. But I have been thinking about this quite a bit lately, which is now that we have the technology, there's really no excuse or no reason why government agencies or anybody really, but specifically government agents, can't track exactly where dollars are going. And it could be it could be like a public website, so the public can go on the website, look at the department, and say, hey, this is what our government is spending their money on. I don't think that's outrageous in today's
But the
technology.
uproar of Congress to try to increase Congress and the DC in general, the absolute uproar that we want to be able to see or track that it is like a attack on democracy. I think that's really telling all the more.
Like your 10-year-old when you give them $20 and you ask to see the change after they go and buy ice cream.
Don't ask me that.
But I have heard some uproar, and part of me feels like wonders whether, I don't know, where are those payments really going? Like, does some of that payment kind of go back to
it's actually not that surprising. Like, it's any major business always has that thing. You always hear about when they go in and they have 4,000 subscriptions to Microsoft Teams, and they only have 2,000 employees. There's always these things that just kind of run out of control.
That was true with my company, and we had like 7 people, and I was like, how do we have like 9 Zoom accounts, and there's only like 4 of us?
It wasn't that. It wasn't that. This is money though that didn't have an allocation. Hundreds of billions of dollars that weren't, we were wasting it. This isn't waste. This isn't like this was something stupid and we can argue about it.
The worst thing that I found is my one buddy, I'm not going to call him out, but he worked in government and he worked in IT. And so his division gets a budget every year, right? And he has to spend it all. Because if he doesn't spend it all, when they look at the budget for the next year, they're going to give him less, right? So he would go in and he would get close to the final quarter of the budget, and he's just spending shit.
Isn't that ridiculous though? How obscene is that?
That's how every private company works as well that I've ever worked for.
Is that how bar down works? Like, if you've got a little extra money at the end of the quarter, like, we got to spend this, otherwise we're not going to get money next quarter from investors.
We'd have to be making money, Mauricio, to do that.
I mean, seriously, some of these are like, I think that's why people get upset. It's like common sense. Like, obviously, if we're going to give you $100 million budget, we want to know where the $100 million goes. And the idea that you have $100 million and then you only needed 70, which is great, and then you're like, well, crap, I better spend this $30 million and go to some like really fancy restaurants or go buy some stuff I don't really need, so that next year I can get another $100 million or $110 million. Well, it just sounds ridiculous.
Well, fun fact, Mauricio, it's actually typically much easier, depending on the year. Obviously, it can go the complete opposite way of this, but recently it's much easier to get a Fannie or Freddie commercial loan in the final quarter, because the same thing happens. They have an allotment of how many billions of dollars they're supposed to be sending out every year. And if they're not going to meet their quota, then their quota is going to go down the next year. So at the end of the year, it's much easier. Actually, they're underwriting a lot easier on deals.
Again, Fannie and Freddie are basically government backed, but I mean, in any other business, it's a for-profit trying to maximize revenue, minimize expenses, and reinvest. That sounds like the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I'm trying to find more information about this traceability stuff.
Well, why don't you guys argue about that next week when you guys are prepared? Because obviously you guys aren't prepared to discuss traceability.
I can't find. I don't know anything about it. So I'm trying to find like when this went into effect and what it does and what it requires. And
So this was a huge hullabaloo. Mississippi like went up against them.
I love that. Hubbubaloo.
And it goes in coordination with Mississippi. It just seems right. But like, seriously, Mississippi got upset. They considered it like an overreach. Whereas the fact that the federal government was wanting to know like allocation. So you had states that didn't like it, which is weird to me, but they consider it
It's extra work, right? Like it's extra work that they're going to have to go and account for everything. They're going to have to figure it out. And there's absolutely no upside for them. Like the upside is everything was correct. And they're like, okay, and they move on. The downside is they figure out that something was going wrong and you get yelled at. So I could see why people would be upset about it. It makes sense to me.
Yeah. So it really went into because it was March, right? In March when they started it and the future enforcement of the rules came in. So the overall, they have two accounts. Doge is not this. Everybody keeps confusing that with it. It's not. This is from the Treasury.
Doge should have tried to claim it. Then they would have had some more wins.
Then they could have been like, yeah, we saved $200 billion. That would have been amazing. Where? We don't know.
we should make this a topic. I'd love to spend some time digging in because this is interesting, and so I'm admittedly ignorant.
See what happens, Kyle, when you just decide to wing things on a random week like that. This is what happens, right? Everyone's like trying to research on the spot.
Great subject,
Kyle. Take some control over here.
All right. I know Mauricio just wants to get talking about his taco. So let's talk.
I do not want to talk about my topic at all. I'm enjoying my wine, my first calories in for the day. I don't know if I told you that.
It was kind of big news, obviously, over the weekend that our negotiator in head got a trade deal struck between, and I'll put that with quotes, actually, a trade deal struck between China and the U.S., pausing the 145% tariffs for 90 days. While negotiations continue. That's in line with what he did with other countries, the 90-day pause. That's a major reprieve, obviously, for some U.S. retailers. You're seeing online all kinds of U.S. retailers that were basically months from going out of business. This should help. But they're not other woods. 145% was basically an embargo, but they're still currently, 30%, I think, still. And we're still already seeing empty ships, empty ports, especially on the West Coast. And luckily, we have a West Coaster in this crew. And not only that, Maurice, didn't you work on the docks or something? Weren't you like a ship docker? What were you?
He still does. Syndications have been down.
Yeah. Mauricio used to work on the docks. Union's been on strike. It's down on it. Yeah. No, I used to be a little bit of I used to do some maritime work, and I used to spend a lot of times down at the Port of Long Beach, Port of LA, usually investigating like longshore fake injuries or cargo ships falling off the ships. Or here's my favorite actually, not my favorite, but like the saddest one is it's so brutal out there that they would, I dealt with all the stowaways, which were people that would sneak onto the ships from one country to get into the United States and trying to get in illegally. So primarily from like South America. So my Spanish ability, I would handle all of those. But what's brutal
I just picture Mauricio like sitting at the docks and like people getting off ships and him handing pamphlets being like, if you need representation, here you go. Here's my card.
No, I would literally get to the ships, but I had to wait for customs to go in there first and clear it. And so I had to wait in my car until they got off the ship. And then I could go in there and start talking to people and figure out what's going on. But a lot of these stowaways, I know this is a little bit off subject, but a lot of these stowaways, died like in the ship, like older folks, they would be living in such terrible conditions. They would literally come out of hiding because they were having a heart attack. And then some, and I won't say what countries, but some ship crew would find stowaways and they would throw them overboard because they don't want to deal with the consequences of having to deal with getting to shore because it's international waters, there's no laws, and they would literally throw people overboard. So yeah, anyway, that was my world. So that's kind of my little bit of a maritime background. So I know the ports really well, especially the Port of Long Beach in LA, which is kind of what I got most of my stats from. And I know there's what sucks is that there is actually there's a great website for the Port of LA. I'm looking at right now. They come out with data in the middle of the month, and the last data though is still showing March, and the April numbers should be coming out literally any second now. And I was hoping it would come out before this month because I think that's where you'll see the stuff. But before the trade stuff, before the tariff, thing that happened earlier this week, and I want to definitely talk about that because that's important, and I want to get your guys' opinion on that. But before that, before this trail deal, it sounds like this 30% was working everywhere because the Port of LA, everybody was talking about how they were expecting a 30% drop or about a third drop in cargo shipments arriving in the Port of LA. Now, a Port of LA is responsible for about a third of all international shipments that comes in via water comes through the Port of LA. So Port of LA is a good barometer. It's not the only port. Obviously, there's ports on the East Coast. There's Texas. There's Louisiana. There's a bunch of them, but a third of it comes through the West Coast. And everybody was reporting expecting to have about a third of a drop. The Washington Post actually reported that the number of shipping containers that arrived in the Port of LA was about a third lower during the same time last year. The Port of LA executive director, Gene Soroka, who's been in the news quite a bit, had predicted prior to the tariff deal that he expected about a 35% drop in container ships coming into the Port of LA. Interestingly enough, and I want to talk about this too, he still expects, even post-deal, that they're going to see about a 25% drop in container ships coming in the month of May, right? So maybe he says there's a little bit of a reprieve for like critical goods like, healthcare and all that kind of stuff, and maybe some of the holiday gifts like toys. But when it comes to like refrigerators and computers and smartphones and microwaves and televisions, he's like, that's not really going to do much. Port of Long Beach chief executive officer expected a 30% drop. And what's interesting now is that you're seeing a little bit of a dichotomy or a little bit of a split of opinion. And right now it's really obviously it's anybody's guess what's going to happen over the next 30, 60, 90 days. But like not half, but there's a group of people that are saying, hey, like after the initial sort of reprieve, okay, great, we've got a little bit of relief here. We're going from 145 down to 30. There's like a mad rush to get as much as you can from China. And they're talking about having, increased shipping costs now, because obviously there's a limited supply of shipping, of warehousing, of ports. Everything is like limited. So they're like expecting a 10% hike in cost. So you add the 30% to the 10% hike in shipping costs. Now you're at like 40%. A lot of retailers, who, by the way, sell to a lot of the major like Macy's and JCPenney's and all these Amazons, they're like, it's going to cost us 40% more to bring in these goods from China. So their prices have to go up. So there's a lot of that going on, but there's also a lot of like, again, this Gene Soroka he's Gene Soroka, who obviously he's an executive director at the Port of Long Beach. If I was going to believe anybody, I would probably lean towards his opinion. He still believes that, yes, there'll be a little bit of a rebound from where we would have been had the tariffs remained at 145, but he's still expecting a major drop in shipping containers. Again, he's still saying 25%, which is going to result in higher prices at your local stores, Amazon, all those places. And obviously there's some job implications going on. I mean, Jay, you said right before we came on, you were telling us that, what did you say? Like a third of all Californians have some connection to the Port of
11%.
What was the percentage?
11%.
Yeah, so 11% of in California has some connection to the port, whether it's directly with the port, whether it's dock workers, truck drivers, warehouse workers, distribution centers, like all of those things. There's some connection. So you got job loss potentials, which, by the way,
well, and Jay, you had a timeline too, right? Because so it was cargo ships from China loaded after April 9th.
Yeah.
Right. We're the ones that have the 145% tariff.
Right. And by the way, they're just coming on board, right? Those ships just literally arrived last Friday.
Yeah. It takes about 30 days for ships to get here, and then another 1 to 2 weeks for that cargo to get moved from the West Coast, where most of it comes in, across the country.
Right. So last Friday, we had the first, the 7 ships, literally 7 ships, 12,000 containers that came in that have that 145% tariffs.
But China already paid for those tariffs before they ever left, right?
No, the tariffs get paid when they arrive.
China doesn't pay for the tariffs.
AJ, let me explain how trade works, since you obviously don't own a business and don't know anything about trade. Let me explain this to you like you're a golden retriever. The tariffs are paid when they arrive.
Hey, don't insult my golden retriever.
Well, if you guys want to see a real time one, so I have this for my home security system. I've used this company called Wise. So they have cheap stuff, but it's pretty good. All ex-Google employees made it, and they posted on their Twitter.
$167,000 isn't cheap.
They posted on their Twitter that they put in a requisition order from overseas for their products, that like they always do, and the value of the product was $167,000. And then they posted that they got a duty bill for $255,000. So, and I have it up on the screen here that their total bill from duty was $255,000 on their $167,000 order.
I don't understand why you have even a security system to begin with. Nobody wants to break in your home. Let me assure you of that. Like, nobody is interested in stealing anything that you have. Just I want to make sure that's clear. But anyway, it's interesting because we went from literally on Friday of last week, because obviously this happened over the weekend. We went from Friday where there was like this doom and gloom and oh my goodness, and then suddenly some of the sentiment, starting this week was like a 180 flip. Like now it's like, holy crap, we have a rush. Now some products do still make sense at 30%, because don't forget, we're still at freaking 30%. I mean, in any other circumstance, this is why I think like Donald Trump he knows what he's doing, right? Like, if you just look at the facts, we went from whatever the tariffs were before all this happened. So now we're at 30%, which is crazy. Like, that's still a ridiculous amount of tariffs.
So like, what if like a country like Vietnam comes out and it starts banging on Trump's door, like, hey, let's get these tariffs way down. What do we got to do? And they strike some crazy deal. Like, they can't be that far off as far as cost is concerned from China. There's a lot of overlap in some of the products that go, some from Vietnam, some from China. And so like I know there's got to be other countries out there who are going to start undercutting China, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's the point of it, to drive other countries so we take away from China over time.
Right, because but something like I was going through all the things and talking to my wife, like, oh, should we be buying school supplies like right now? Because that was one of the things that like most of it comes from China. But like I saw that 58% of all U.S. footwear imports come from China. So like shoes, like if this had stayed, like the cost of shoes is just going to like triple. And there's just other certain ones.
The anecdote that I saw was actually a specific shoe retailer, and that's the one that was talking about I got a 30% tariffs, plus I've got probably another 10% increase in shipping costs, because everybody's rushing to front load this because nobody knows what's going to happen in 90 days. So it's like, okay, 30% sucks, but as long as I can eke out a profit at 30, it's better than whatever the alternative is. And so they're saying, look, this is an importer that literally resells to Macy's, JCPenney's, Nordstrom's, Amazon, like these big retailers. And they're like, look, my cost is going to go up 40%. I'm going to have to raise prices when it comes to the fall season. That's a given. So I still kind of going full circle to what we talked about earlier, the debauchery that was going on 20 minutes ago, is that when you look at the inflation numbers, once these shipping containers make it to port, make it through the system, to Jay's point, they got to get off the ship, they got to get off the containers, get on trucks, get on the warehouse, get it to distribution centers, and eventually make it to Walmart. We'll eventually make it, especially for you, Jay, Costco, although you're not going to go to Costco anymore. It's going to make it to all these retail places.
That's the real reason. Jay's bought himself time. He's waiting for the tariff stuff to get figured out.
No, I still send my wife to Costco.
You just don't want to wait in the car trying to get in.
100%.
That's a good question though, because like these logistics companies, right after the trade deal was struck, they kind of came out and said they anticipate a surge in freight containers over the next 4 to 6 weeks for people trying to front load this. But like at the same time, like, do we know, is the trade deal going to be better? So like if they do work something out in the next 60, 90 days, is it going to be better than what we have now? Is it going to be worse? Is it going to go back up? He said it's not going to go back up to 145, but it could go to 80. Like if you're a company right now, like what do? How do you plan for this? Do you bring in more products? Do you kind of wait it out? Do you and how do you quote 90 days out? Like in our business a lot, like in construction and things like that, like you put in orders for like 90 days out, and like, how do you get a quote on some of these products that are coming from China or coming from overseas? Like if someone comes to you and says, hey, I need a quote for 90 days from now, like, what do you say? What do you do?
Well, I just suspended over $50,000 in orders from one of my companies in 1 week because the tariffs associated from us, we manufacture it here. We send them to all over the globe. The tariffs associated with that. So the bigger retailers, they're buying large bulk. We package them up. We send them over. The fees associated with them were like crazy, staggering amount. So we literally just sent out communications to all those and said, listen, you can either pay it or we're not, but we're not going to cover this for you guys. So you either have to pay it or we'll just cancel your orders and resend. And we just canceled most of their orders because it doesn't make economic sense.
And that goes back to the original point, which I'd love to get your feedback on it. But like, we haven't heard any details from this weekend. Like, I don't know. They keep saying progress is made, but like, there's nothing that's come out that any concessions, anything's happened other than let's just get 90 more days to figure this out. Because yes, it's a little bit better to go from 145 to 30, but it's not like, oh, we're back.
China's at 10, we're at 30. And that's basically all we know.
Well, they did report that like China was basically like they were like banning certain exports completely. So like the rare earth minerals was the big thing in the news, and so they're turning that back on. Was kind of the report too.
Yeah, turning that back on, especially after Ukraine.
Yeah,
I just feel. I mean, again, I think nothing really came out from what I can see, and I've read a lot. I don't see anything concrete that any progress is made. And so to your point, I think, Kyle, you were talking about front running and tweets and this and the other. It's like you're going to get some statement from China saying, oh, nothing's really happened. And suddenly, market's going to tank, gold's going to go up. And it's like, it's so fragile right now, right? So fragile.
Right. Well, even today, Tuesday, China made some statement kind of poking at US, right? About like, oh, a bully ends up alone kind of thing. So the problem is that most political leaders are going to be, well, there's a reason it's called politically correct, right? They're going to come out and say the right things, and they're going to care about what their constituents say and all that. China's a wild card, man. You don't know what, like, he doesn't have to answer to anyone. So that's going to be a tough one. Who knows in 90 days? Like, we already saw it when they paused it with China.
Let's say they figure it out, Kyle. Let's say that they're like, oh, who's going to be doing business with China now? Like, seriously, let's say they find out a new agreement. We all worry that Trump gets mad and he immediately changes it on China, even though they had an agreement. 3 months later, he's like, you know what? I don't like it because my fortune cookie said something bad. And China's like, we don't make fortune cookies. That's like an American thing. And he's like, I don't care. I don't like my fortune cookie. So 50% tariffs, right?
I'm convinced he wants to reopen Alcatraz because they were showing reruns of The Rock on TBS or something. And he watched it.
So to do business with China, I think that the damage honestly has really been done. They're going to patch things up and everything, but business investment and working, I don't think it'll ever be the same again.
I think it's the same with every country on the planet, though. I mean, every country on the planet realizes that at the drop of a hat, Trump can decide, okay, I want to put tariffs back in place. And so every country is going to be the same way. They're going to be wary of working with us, and they will as much as they absolutely have to. But they're going to start looking for alternatives. And at some point, there's going to be global trade with us as a much more minor player than we were 3 months ago.
Demand is demand, though. So it's us deciding that we're not going to invest in there when we're sending the billions, and our corporations are the ones that are building the production and the investment over, and they're deciding it, and we're buying the stuff. They're going to. People will sell.
Yeah, we made this comment last time. Like, money's still green, right? Like, if we're gonna buy the shit from them, they're gonna sell it to us.
Yep, they got countries that are hoping to take China's spot.
Right, but it comes back to not that I'm going to ask you guys for a prediction on a recession, but like if a recession does happen this year, doesn't that change things? Though, like, there's one thing to be like talking tough about like long term, but like if we're in a recession and people are like that pressure of a recession, I think will weigh on the ability to just be like, oh, I'm going to slap this.
I don't even know what a recession 30%. Means anymore, though. Everyone talks about a recession like it's like a switch on point. And a switch off. Yeah. Like, we're either a good economy or we're this recession. Like, there's definitely shades of that, and then there's a gradual process, and it's like majority of the time you don't know you're in a recession. It's
But
not
to
like
me,
a COVID thing.
to me, the important recession to this point is when it consumes the news cycle. Like unemployment is high, people are like it's in the news, like where the stock market's down. Like just the news cycle is such that it's harder for anyone to be like, oh, you know what, screw this, I'm going to go from 30% to 100%. I'm going to start pulling these strings that you can do in today's economy, but can you do it when things aren't going well? That's my only point.
But if you watch the news cycle, I mean, I wonder if you polled Americans right now, how many Americans do you think would say we're in a recession because of the news cycle, even though we're not?
50%. The opposite 50% that said we were 6 months ago.
0% of the Republicans and the majority of Democrats.
Right, which is the opposite of 6 months ago.
You know, I did hear an interesting stat. I think it was CNBC, because I've told you guys before. For some reason, I'm listening to a lot of talk radio in my car lately. But they were saying that the equity markets, like the stock market, is about 60. Like they have polls and everything of all the major players. Like, right, it's not just the retail investor, but like 60% of people in the equity markets are Democrats and 40% are Republicans. So depending on the news coming in, they'll filter it one way. But then if you go to the bond market, it's flipped. Like in the bond market, 60% are more Republican and right-leaning than Democrats. And I thought that was an interesting thing because clearly people filter information as they come in, and depending on what side of the political aisle you are, you will react one way or another depending on where you are. So I thought that was an interesting comment. Not sure how relevant it is to this discussion, but we were kind of going in that direction. Kyle, what's going on?
Well, so I did want to point out one thing in that whenever things like this happen, disruptions, we can always talk about the bad stuff, but there's always there is new businesses and new things come out of this. And one crazy thing that I found out about that I'd never heard of, and you guys can tell me, maybe the guy who worked on the docks knows about this, but there's something called a foreign trade zone, that it's a US thing. And so basically you can get characterized like it's a warehouse or like a storage area in the US where it's specifically designated secured storage on manufacturing sites approved by US Customs to allow temporary avoidance of tariffs. So you could basically ship products in from like China and put it into this foreign trade zone, or FTZ, as they say, or in Canada, FTZ. Put it in there, and then you don't pay the tariffs until you pull it out of that designated area. So that area is kind of like, I don't know, like international waters.
Like it's free trade, almost like a free trade. I like everybody's Googling it right now. It was like, oh, I don't know what free trade.
And so it was crazy because like it just seemed like a smart thing. And the problem is it's expensive to set up, and it's like, all the red tape and all this thing. So not a lot of people did, but apparently it's quite popular for certain businesses where they have products where there's a different tariff on the components of whatever they're building versus the end product. So they can actually have part of their factory designated as this FTZ, bring in all these components, manufacture it, and when it comes out, it's the finished product, so it gets tariffed at a different rate than those small products that would have come in, because those small products never entered technically the US. They went right into this FTZ. Well, now apparently memberships surged. It's an all-time high now because people are figuring this out, and it's like a whole new business. And anybody who was on the front run of that, like, it created a whole new business just because of these tariffs and these issues right now. And I just thought it was interesting that, like, whenever you create problems, people are going to find solution in capitalism, and they're going to create new businesses, and everything's going to shift. And it's the whole same idea, like, okay, when we have AI, well, we're going to lose all these jobs. Well, it's going to create more jobs, and it's going to. So we're definitely going to see maybe a new landscape, but we're going to have other things pop out of this, I guess.
That's the point of it. This is a shifting landscape. We are changing, and a lot. And the shifting landscape will have winners and losers like it always has. You can't avoid that. That's not like avoidable. So I think that these changes can be economically violent. And there's obviously good ways to handle them, and there's very bad ways to handle them. Maybe tweeting every 5 seconds isn't the best way to handle it. But the overall shift in these things, right, it will set a new order. And I think that's the purpose and the goal, obviously. And what a lot of people want is they're like the last the final stages of the last order wasn't working. So we want change. And that's rough.
Well, Mauricio, got anything else? You keep asking me. You before we wrap this up?
No, I'm just honestly, I don't have an answer, but it's just interesting to see the two different viewpoints of what's going to happen over the next even 30 days. Like some people think there's going to be a surge in imports coming in, and it sounds like there's a little bit of surge of imports coming in, which will offset the expected 30 to 35% drop, but it's not like we're going to go back to normal. Right, we're going to go, instead of being down 30%, 35%, we're going to be down 20, 25%.
Right, people have commitments, right? So they're going to have to fulfill certain commitments and deal with it. But then they're also definitely looking for alternatives.
It's just hard for me. Look, we're all business owners. It's just hard for me to wrap my mind around this idea that you suddenly add a 30% cost to my balance sheet and somehow whatever, we just continue as normal. Like that to me doesn't make any sense.
The question becomes, how many businesses out there have a 30% margin?
Correct. And I'm going to guess the majority of businesses, other than Bar Down Investments, I know Bar Down has like a 75%, gross margin, but like everybody else, usually 30% is about as high as you're going to get.
Well, when you're dealing with goods, it's usually much less than that.
For goods. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, on a good, you're right. I'm talking service business. Yeah, that's right. If you're looking at actual goods, you're way lower than that. So but again,
it's passed on to the consumer. So it's not them. It's all of us that pay it.
Right. And so that's the question: is what's the elasticity of the price? Like, how much can you raise the price on the U.S. consumers and still get away with it? Because if you can raise prices 30%, then it's not an issue.
Well, the biggest issue though is there are certain small businesses where it's just crushing them, right? Like there's obviously they're cherry picking news stories, but like some of them are heartbreaking. Where the one woman created her own, it was like for babies. It was a really cool idea where like it sticks on the mat and makes like you could attach absolutely everything that the baby would use so it doesn't fall on the ground. And it was a cool idea, but you know what? She picked a supplier from China. And that's her only supplier. She's not big enough to have suppliers for multiple countries. And all of a sudden, like her business is done. And then as obviously they cherry picked this story. So she went out and took an SBA loan backed by her house to try and get through this. So, but if Trump doesn't figure out this thing in the next 90 days, her entire life's going to explode.
And I have family. I do have, look, I get that. And this is a good point to emphasize. And I want to do this. When most people think of small businesses, they think of like your example, like, oh, it's me and 9 people and 3 people, and it's just me, or I've got maybe 25 people or whatever. The official definition of a small business is somebody has less than 500 employees. You could have 499 employees and you're a small business, which is ridiculous. So when we think of small businesses, I think of, it's like a family-owned thing. You got maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 employees. Those are the ones that are absolutely getting.
To me, it's just any business at that level where they don't have the luxury of being able to diversify their supply chains. And like they have a product and they get it from one supplier.
Because it's been standard practice to diversify supply chain for most of these companies for a long time. Like they have them backup ones, 2 to 3. Because, you got to remember what happened with the tsunami. Like for all the people that had one supplier in Taiwan, right, they're gone. Their businesses here were gone overnight. So like you had a few things. You had the tsunami, right? And then COVID was obviously a huge one where having backup suppliers in the world, you've got to do it. Like if not, it's not only about Trump tweeting, tariffs. Natural disasters, you're talking about government unrest. Like it's a big deal.
Yeah. Sometimes you can't though. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've got to think of like there's small businesses. I almost want to think of like a new definition of like a micro business. Like if you're a business that has a store, a retail front, you have 3 employees and you have one Chinese menu, wholesale.
Or even if you have 2. Even if you have like 3 options and they're all in China, you're still getting fucked.
That's right. And that's the only way it works because you need that. That's your whole business model. It's like, oh, I buy this from China, I get it for $1, I sell it for $1.50.
Well, if it is your business model, I'm telling you, if you go to Alibaba There's actually features you can do this. So you can take your blueprints, everything else. I'm talking 99% of all products can be turned around and manufactured, right, within a certain location or in a certain time. So this is a real issue people are having. And I work with not only our company and other companies as they're doing this, but you don't need to be a big business to have backup manufacturers. And I think that that's a trap. And I don't want anybody listening to this fall into it. So you can work with, and you can actually send out, you can do RFPs, all sorts of stuff. And you should diversify it based upon continent, not individual people or even continent. You should diversify in its standard practice too. And you can go in and find the different manufacturers. One may not be, maybe a little higher price than you want somewhere else, but that's why you have them as a backup. They'll give you the startup time. So here's what we need to start it up. Here's how long it will take. And you would be shocked at how fast these people are. So anybody listening to this, you can immediately go and start looking, and you should, on Alibaba. Now, it's crazy that we have to look up tariffs, things like that. But I would suggest anyone listening to do that.
It's 100% Chinese though, right? Isn't it? Or is that a marketplace with other?
No,
other
it's a
places?
Marketplace that's on it. And that's just one. There's multiple of these.
The reason I bring it up is that I used to actually have an Amazon business, and I would import. I actually had it was like a wine, not surprisingly, a wine business, and I would import. I would go to Alibaba and I would buy wine openers, right? So I would white label wine openers. I would buy them for like literally $2 a wine opener. You pay for the shipping and the tariffs, and now you're at like $6. Then you pay for the packaging, now you're $8. Then I would retail it for like $11, right? So, but that's all Alibaba. So to your point though, should people right now, if I was in that business, right, my cost was now is like 30% more. Like instead of costing me $2, it would now cost me.
Well, and where do you, if you're going to diversify, where do you diversify to? Because I brought up Vietnam a couple of times. They're 45% right now.
Yeah, but AJ's point, which is a good one, is I always associate Alibaba with just and my supplier was in Shanghai, like in China. But to AJ's point, if Alibaba has other countries, then just make sure whatever you're importing and white labeling or whatever you're importing, whatever they're doing, just find other countries.
What other countries right now? Like
India.
Like there's
India. You have so there's the Philippines, India, Taiwan, Mexico. And they're competing.
But all those countries, like most of them, they all had high tariffs put on them too that are just currently like paused. You have no idea how this is going to work.
Not
out.
160%.
Right, but now China's down to 30. So like, what do you pick? Like, I guess that's the thing. Like, if you're trying to diversify against these countries, you have no idea what the countries are going to end up for these trade agreements now.
Hence the reason why you have to have multiple, because we don't know. So like, if you're in this position as a business, once again, you need to diversify continent, right? You need to be looking at this. China, obviously, because I think that's the big one that people should be really worried about. The other ones are a little more straightforward, and they're just not as big, and the range isn't big, but you don't know. And because you don't know, you need to be very diversified in this. I think and we won't know. Nobody's going to know, right? We can say there's a 90-day pause, or we think, but nobody here knows. We don't know if they jack a 200% tariff on it. So because we don't know, you need to make sure you have multiple backups.
I mean, one guy in this podcast thought it was going to be over in 3 days. So no one really knows.
We should get that guy should be, replaced ASAP.
All right. That is good advice though, AJ. I like, that's something I didn't know. I've never done shipping or anything from overseas in bulk. So, little fun fact there. Appreciate that one. Should we make this a short episode, guys?
Yes. I'm voting for. Hey, if you're listening to this on YouTube, drop a comment. Shorter, longer, the same. I want to know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. All right, top 10.
Wait, I thought we were going to skip the top 10 on this episode. It was going to be a shorter episode, no top 10. We're going to go straight into would
Never
you rather.
once have we mentioned skipping the top 10, Mauricio, today. We did talk about just making the top 10 only Letterkenny jokes, but I've just sprinkled a couple in instead. I got more if you want. All right, top 10 baby names. It's not in the US.
What does this have to do with tariffs? What does this have to do with tariffs? What does it have to do with
it's just a fun top 10. When have you ever complained about what it has to do with tariffs? Sometimes I mix it in, but sometimes it's just
10 baby
fun.
names of babies imported from China.
It just came out. It was just released, the 2024 top 10 baby names, and I was reading it, and I thought it was interesting. Not necessarily the actual top 10. The actual top 10 is not that interesting. Like, boy names were Liam, Noah, Oliver, Theodore, James, Henry. Like, it was like, you know, okay, that's okay names. And then the girls were Olivia, Emma, Amelia, Charlotte, Maya, Sophia, Isabel. Like, they were just like normal names. But then they also released the rising the fastest in popularity names, and that's where my attention was caught. So here is the top 5 baby boy names that are rising the fastest in popularity in 2024. Number 5,
Mauricio.
Isaiah, spelled Azaiah. I assume that's I don't know, that's some descent from something, I don't know. Number 4, Halo as a name. Number 3, Briar. Okay. Number 2, Colson. And number 1, Truce. So apparently the fastest rising baby boy name is Truce. So I thought that was interesting.
That's fascinating.
Another interesting one in the baby girls was Scotty. Scotty apparently is one of the top rising female baby names.
That's awesome. Hey, can I
Fiona and me doing in a van every Sunday.
Can I give away a freebie for some of our listeners? I've got to get rid of some of my books here, and I've got an autographed copy of Tax-Free Wealth from my buddy Tom Wheelwright. I will give that away if anyone in the comments on YouTube can drop the name of AJ for AJ Osborne. If you know what AJ stands for, drop it in the comments. And
can I do it right now? Can I just
no. You can do it next week. Whoever correctly does it, and if there's more than one, which I doubt, I'm not even sure. No, I
actually like your name, AJ. You should use your actual name more often.
I will get you an autographed copy of Tax-Free Wealth.
It's not my actual name. AJ was my actual name. My grandmother was the head nurse. She wouldn't sign off the documents. I'm from a small town in Idaho, to release me from the hospital because she said AJ isn't a real name. So they actually had to give my other names, which I won't mention, to me from AJ.
To get released?
Not the other way around. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So she would release me from the hospital.
All right. I think I'm not even 100% sure what it is. I have an idea.
Can I guess?
No, you can't, because then you'll ruin it.
You don't know it?
Well, once we get off the show, after the show, we can chit chat about what it is. Anyway, I didn't mean to throw you off there, but I'm in giving away books modes, and I got to get rid of some of my books.
Actually, that Dash-a-thon's a banger, by the way. AJ.
There it is. Aardvark Jewel. That's my guess.
How did you get that?
I also wanted to reward the listeners who have stuck around for an hour and 10 minutes.
We can reward. I just put in the chat too, though. We all the manufacturing directories and everything. This is a really important one. We'll put that in the show notes. Send it over to you, Kyle. So anybody that is going through that kind of stuff and struggling, they can work and go on there because it is a big deal. So that's a give me for sticking around to listen to us. Yeah.
Awesome. Should make it into a blog. Get ChatGPT to write it for you.
Yeah. We should call it like something like, I don't know, DRE. DRE Daily would be a good name for
throw
that.
it in DRE Daily, Jay.
Great name.
There you go.
We should do that.
You should
Why
do that.
hasn't anyone done that yet?
I don't know. Jay, take the lead on that.
Come on, Jay.
Speaking of Jay, you got any hypothetical situations? You've been slacking on those.
I think I had one, but I'm drawing a blank.
We got to come up with I'll come up with one right now. Hey, Jay, AJ, it doesn't work for AJ, but Jay, $20 million, or you can never have wine ever again.
You know what?
Easy.
I'll bypass the wine. I'll do that.
AJ, 20 million, but no Diet Coke.
But remember, wait. Remember, if you're like religious and Catholic, you wouldn't be able to take communion or drink the wine from the church.
I'm not.
I think I might even, for 20 million, tax free, I assume, right? 20 million.
Is that going to move the needle, Kyle?
It will, because I feel like 20 is a good number, and if you use Mauricio's thing, if you can invest that at 8%, you're getting 1.6 or whatever the number is. Then I feel like that's enough. That I think I might even give up alcohol for that. I love me alcohol.
I'd do it.
Yeah, I think I would do that just because I probably don't need to drink as much wine as I do.
I haven't really experimented with drugs much, but I feel like if I have to give up alcohol, I could find something to give me that fix.
Maybe for Jay, it's like 20 million or never be able to go to Costco ever again.
But I can send somebody to Costco, right?
No. You cannot consume. You cannot consume.
Ooh, no, I'm
any
not
product.
I'm not giving
You
up on
cannot
Costco
consume
products.
any products from Costco.
I don't think I could give up Costco pizza. If I'm there shopping and I'm like walking by and it's dinner time, I'll just pick up the phone and call my wife. Should I just bring a pizza home?
Yeah.
So what? Okay, be honest, Jay. How often do you get the $1.50 hot dog special?
Never. I don't need hot dogs.
Never.
Never.
I've never gotten it. Not once.
I've never had a Costco hot dog.
Neither have I. But I wish I have. Every time I go by, I think,
So last week, guys, Kyle, you did the 100 guys versus a gorilla. Did you see what the new one is now? It's not much of an argument, but 100 Americans versus guys versus 100 Brits. That's been pretty funny to watch.
Really?
The things. Even the Brits agree. They're like, yeah, we're not.
The Brits will be drunk. They'll be drunk, first of all.
well, there's the thing about Americans, like you could get 99 duds, but there's going to be one crazy in
One
there.
crazy dude
Like,
that's
it's
gonna.
like the best that America's out of 100. You're
He's
probably
like,
getting
I've been
3
waiting for this.
Yeah, like they're going to be. This is going to be the highlight of their life.
As long as there's not too many AJs in there, because if there's like a bunch of AJs in there, we've got problems.
Oh my god! I thought you were going to say Asians. That was.
I for some reason I'm remembering that the time we were talking about like a fight between AJ and Kyle or AJ and Jay, and you're like, they just need to push me.
Push me. Can't walk. Just like gently push me. All right.
I don't know. I saw you running the other day, AJ. That was you're getting there slowly but surely. You're going to be
I
getting.
may not be much of a runner, but I can bite. So.
Oh, there we go. So we got 1/3 of the triathlon. All right. That's all I got, guys. We all back next week?
Yep.
Same bat time, same bat channel?
Yep.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but my drink's gone. Go hit the head. I will see you next Thursday.
See ya.
See you next Thursday, guys.